Hello, good to have you here. Welcome. My name is Carrie Mallon. For those of you who do not know me, I've been a professional tarot reader for almost 9 years. I'm the co-creator of the Spacious Tarot deck, and I do know a thing or two about being in a tarot slump. It's happened to me more than once. I've worked with a lot of clients that this has happened to. So today we're going to talk about some reasons you might get into a tarot slump and some ways you might move out of that. The first thing I want to say is let's normalize being in a tarot slump. It is okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean you can't still consider yourself a tarot reader. Just like with any other hobby in your life, your interest in tarot, your level of connection to the cards is going to wax and it's going to wane, and that is okay. And that kind of leads directly into the next point I want to bring up, which is when you feel like you're in a slump with tarot, ask yourself, am I really in a slump, or do I just need to sort of change my expectation or the story I have in my mind about what it means to be a tarot reader? Because I know a lot of tarot readers who only pull the cards maybe on like the solstices and equinoxes or on their birthdays or at the new year or when there's some type of an occasion to pull the cards. And that doesn't mean they're in a slump just because they're not pulling cards every single day. So that's kind of a good starting point, is identifying for yourself, do I really feel like I'm in a slump, or do I just need to kind of reframe my expectations for myself and my relationship with tarot? But if you do indeed feel like, no, I'm definitely in a slump, I want to reconnect with my cards, I want to be more present, I want to like bring something new to my tarot practice, then I would say let's start by identifying what is the cause of your tarot slump. And I'm going to go through a few kind of big categories that, in my experience personally and working with clients and other people, are some of the main reasons that we get into kind of a mad place with our tarot practice. So you may or may not connect with one of these, but the main things that I see as like these broad categories of why people get into slumps with tarot would be confusion, overwhelm, pressure, or boredom. So we're going to go through each one of those. So maybe you've stepped away from your cards due to confusion. Generally, this manifests as just feeling like something isn't quite clicking. Like maybe you've read a few books, you've taken a course, you've watched some videos online or whatever. You've been learning tarot for a while, but you still just feel like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just feel kind of confused by this. This is actually super common, even if you feel like you've been working with tarot for a while. If you haven't found a teacher or a resource or like a method of reading tarot that really connects with you, I've talked to a lot of people who it's like even the first couple of years they're working with tarot, they just kind of feel like, I don't really know what I'm doing, this isn't really clicking. So that's one of the suggestions I would make if you're in a place of confusion is, can you open yourself up to finding like a teacher or a course or a resource that well and truly connects with you? I will do a shameless self-promotion here because I have a free 90-minute intro to tarot course called Foundational Tarot, which you can get on my website, carriemallon.com, by signing up for my email list. And not to toot my own horn, but I have had quite a few people reach out to me where they were in that place of confusion and maybe they'd worked with a few different resources and they hadn't found an approach to tarot that truly connected with them, and then my approach resonated with them. So if you like other things that I've done, you can check that out. But the biggest thing I think when you're in a place of confusion is ask yourself, like, of the teachers and resources I've come across so far, which one feels the strongest, feels the warmest for me, and then stick with one course, one book, one teacher for a while until you feel comfortable with that. And another super important thing to remember if you're just feeling confused and feeling like tarot isn't really clicking is that there are no right or wrong ways to read tarot. I talk to a lot of people, especially people who are just beginning, but they pull some cards and then they get really fixated on what's the correct message that this reading is telling me. And if you're really fixated on that, it makes tarot no fun. It can even make the confusion even worse because Obviously, different teachers, different resources are going to have slightly different spins on the way they present information, the way they interpret the cards. So remind yourself that there's no right or wrong way when you're interacting with teachings. Those are there to give you a starting off point, not to give you a definitive answer. And then this might sound like, well, it doesn't even sound like I am kind of just negating everything I just said, but when you're in that place of confusion, it can also help to just say, okay, like I'm not gonna look up any card meanings. I'm just going to sit with the cards and like be with them and tell myself there's no right or wrong answers and just like see what comes up for me. The next thing that can really lead you to a tarot slump actually connects to the first thing. So first thing we talked about was confusion, and now we're going to talk about overwhelm. So in this lovely age of social media, you can grab that beautiful magical little device in your pocket and open up your social media feed and find 10,000 tarot readers and find 80 million tarot courses. You can go into even like a big chain store like Barnes and Noble and find probably like 10 different tarot books. So there's a lot of information out there, and that is something that I see causes a lot of people to step away from tarot, is they just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm almost being bombarded with all of this. This is one that I personally relate to a lot, is the overwhelm. In fact, last year during 2022, I got off of Instagram completely for quite a while, and I've over the years slowly just like really pared down what like blogs I follow and what books I buy and things like that, because I love that there's this boon and this like huge abundance of tarot information out there, but it's also almost sometimes like too much to handle. And I've been really focusing the past year especially on picking, kind of like I talked about with the confusion aspect, picking one resource and going deep into that. So depth instead of breadth. Some other really helpful things for when you're feeling overwhelmed would be just like simplifying in other ways with your tarot practice. So for example, focusing only on working with one particular deck, or focusing on, instead of doing like a Celtic cross or a really big spread, focus on just pulling like one card at a time or doing 3 card spreads. So simplify and pare down and go deep instead of wide. This is probably a good place to sneak in another piece of advice that I talk about in my free course, Foundational Tarot, which is to basically put your tarot time in your schedule and in a way that works for you. So if you're coming out of a slump, part of that might be like, okay, like I really want to commit to my tarot practice. And of course, if you really want to commit to something, that means you have to decide, when am I doing this thing? So can you set aside 5 minutes in the morning to get back to a daily draw practice? Or even if it's not every day, because that's another thing when you're coming out of a slump, and or if you're in like a place of overwhelm, you might just be like, okay, can I do like a little Friday night tarot pull? Can I do like a Sunday morning thing? Can it just be a weekly thing? But whatever you decide, just sort of simplifying and putting that on your calendar, like this is the time when I do my tarot stuff. Okay, let's now talk about pressure that can put you in a tarot slump. So this most often, but not always, but most often applies to people who are trying to like build a business or put out content regularly around tarot. Something does happen no matter how pure your intentions are. I haven't talked to a single person who's like tried to build a business around tarot who hasn't had their relationship with tarot change in some way. When you are trying to monetize something, when you are trying to like put content out in a way that is search engine optimized and all of those kinds of things, it does create a level of pressure, and that can make you have kind of a meh feeling towards your cards. I've experienced this a few times over the, like I said, I've been a professional for 9 years, and I've talked to a lot of other tarot people, tarot professionals who go through this as well. This could really be its whole own separate video, like how do you navigate pressure when you're a tarot professional or when you're an aspiring tarot professional. But a few things I would say, some are sort of the tried and true things, would be like, try and take your focus away from like growing followers or getting attention and put it on actually providing value, actually putting out things that are really interesting to you. Give yourself breaks from putting out content. I am the queen of this because when I first started my business all those years ago, I was weekly putting out blogs or putting out videos. And over the years, it's become more sporadic. And I know that's not realistic with every tarot professional because maybe you like have a Patreon or you're trying to do something where like putting out regular content is part of that. But how can you find ways to create your business in such an avenue that you don't have to feel that pressure, and that the people who are supporting you know that when you do come forward with something to say, it's going to be something that's really coming from your heart, and it's going to be something that's really meaningful to you. It's not just like putting out an Instagram post or putting out a video just because like, oh my gosh, I have to do this because I'm building a business. I used to do business coaching, and maybe I'll do a little bit of that again someday in the future, we'll see. But something that I often told my coaching clients is, especially with the type of community that resonates with tarot, I think people can really sense when the content that you put out comes from a place of pressure and not a place of genuinely having something to share, because you're reaching a very intuitive group of people. And so actually, if you keep putting that pressure on yourself, like I have to show up, I have to grow, I have to put out content, it can actually be counterproductive to expanding your business, because the people who like come across that content can sense the urgency and the pressure that went into that. Of course, another thing that can get you into the pits, get you into a tarot slump, is just plain and simple boredom. And there's a lot of reasons that you might get bored. It might just be like, I've had tons of hobbies that I don't stick with for my entire life, like sometimes I pick up a hobby, I do it for a few months, and then I'm bored and that's it. And maybe that's how tarot is for you, and that's okay. Or maybe it's like you're bored with the deck that you're using. We talked about that earlier, like, picking a deck that you really connect with and going with that. Or maybe it's you're bored with the system of tarot that you've been working with. Like I learned with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and most of the books and resources that I've interacted with are based on the Rider-Waite system. But about a year ago, and I actually made a video about this, I read a book based on the Thoth system. And that was a really fun way for me to get out of a place of boredom, because it was like new ways of interpreting the cards, new ways of understanding them and working with them. So maybe it's something like that. Like maybe you want to try out the Thoth if you've never done that, or the Tarot de Marseille. I never know how to pronounce that. We recently released, for my tarot deck that I co-created with Annie Rugit, the Spacious Tarot, we recently released an expansion pack. And so that's also been a really fun way for me to like bring some fresh life into my tarot practice and be less bored with things. It's this, whole new set of cards and new ways that I can work with tarot. So, or there's also, like different systems. It doesn't have to just be tarot. So maybe you want to experiment with the oracle cards or get into Lenormand or something like that. Another thing I like to do when I'm just feeling kind of bored with tarot is do like outside of the box activities with my cards. For example, just this morning, I shared a reel on Instagram where I talked about this activity where you pull 3 cards and then just ask yourself, like, what song lyrics do these remind me of? That's something that happens to me a lot already when I pull tarot cards, is either the imagery or what comes to me about the messages of the cards will remind me of song lyrics. I have a lot of song lyrics stored in my head. So that's just one example of doing something kind of fun and silly that's not just like pulling the cards and reading them, but a fun activity you can do when you're just kind of like bored. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention another thing you might do when you're in a tarot slump is pull some cards about this. So you could either just pull one card and ask maybe for some advice on how can I reinvigorate my connection to tarot, or you could do 2 cards. Maybe one could help you think about like what's the cause of this tarot slump, and then the second could be some advice on moving out of that. Something else I think is super helpful is remind yourself why you got into tarot in the first place. Again, in the foundational tarot course, one of the things I talk about is setting an intention for the energy you want to bring to your tarot studies and to your tarot practice. So instead of an energy of like overwhelm or confusion or some of the things that can lead you to get into a slump, this could be a good time for you to set the intention of, I want my time with the cards to be infused with curiosity and exploration and openness and newness and magic and synchronicity. And obviously I don't know for sure if this is the case for you, but certainly for me and for a lot of us, those tie into the reasons we got into tarot to begin with, because it felt sparkly and magical and exciting and full of synchronicity. I am a big believer that your tarot practice should feel good. That does not mean that it cannot ever challenge you. Tarot certainly challenges me all the time, but it should feel good. It should be chill. It should be something that enhances your life. So that's what all of these tips are about, is like getting out of a slump and getting back into a place where you feel good about tarot. So remember, it is okay to take a break. It is okay to not read tarot every single day. It is okay to be behind on the bajillions of books and social media posts and like all the new stuff that's coming out every single day. It's okay to take a break. And when you're ready, this is the thing. I can assure you, when you are ready to come out of your tarot rut, whether that's right now or maybe you still need a little time, the cards will be there. They will be there. They will welcome you back with open arms. So I hope you found some things in here to think about, maybe things to play with, and I'm wishing you all of the best, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.